Hello, and welcome to our Kindness Fair presentation on Kindness and Collaboration Week. We are thrilled to have Rachel Delaney with us. She is a elementary school counselor at Winter Park in Chesterfield County, and I am Sarah Bazemore. I'm the school counseling specialist at the Virginia Department of Education. And without further ado, I'm going to hand the virtual floor over to Rachel so she can tell us about this initiative that she did.
Thank you, Sarah. So this was a collaboration, Kindness and Collaboration Week, but it was a collaboration between the school counseling department and our STEAM department. We're lucky enough to have two STEAM teachers at our school, and we kind of noticed a trend of major and minor incident reports and referrals to school counselors, calls on the walkie, things like that, while classes were doing collaborative projects. Project-based learning is such a huge trend in education, and it's really an opportunity for students to be creative, but it's also a lot of pressure, and it can be really difficult for students to jump in and collaborate on stuff, especially when they're passionate about the topic. So we were thinking that maybe we could address this by specifically teaching the skills of how to collaborate with a low stakes project. So we kind of came up with using the design process, which is something that they learn in STEAM. They go through the steps like imagine, ask yourself, plan out what you're going to do, then you create. So we were going to use those steps and talk about specifically how to be a kind collaborator, how to be a good member of a team, while working through those processes. So then they put their knowledge to use by designing a pop-up card. And they were supposed to choose a helper in the building to, write their card for. And we left it vague on purpose so that they could think about, who is a helper, whoever that is to them. And then once they were done, they shared out their cards with their class to show off what they had done. And then they delivered the cards on Valentine's Day. It was a really fun, whole building, just day of running around, delivering. It was super fun.
I love that. And I love that it was initiated based off of data. You looked at a problem that was occurring and addressed it through a really specific targeted intervention, where you connected with fellow educators in the building to make this happen. It's really awesome, and I'm sure the kids truly enjoyed it. And I think, what would you say is, maybe if someone was wanting to do this in their building or wanting to do something like it, what would be sort of the first step that they would need to take to get things rolling?
Well, I think, we started by, talking with our STEAM department and coming up with our slide deck. So we chose morning meeting. We had that 20 minutes built into our school schedule, but this could really fit with, depending on a resource class, maybe you could pair up, spend 20 minutes of a resource doing this. It really just finding the time for the students to do this and then giving them the structure. So our homeroom teachers were the ones who, delivered the lesson. We put everything together in the slide deck. So we shared, so we set up, kind of the structure. So, you wouldn't need to use this exact, the design process if that's not something that your students use. This is something that they learned in STEAM. We have posters about it in the building, but basically just breaking down, throughout the week, what is an essential part of being a collaborator? How do you make sure that you hear all ideas? And so we built in that time. Here's 2 minutes to think, we set a timer, 2 minutes to think of your own ideas and write them down, 10 minutes to go around and listen to everybody's idea. That's in day one. And so then they would vote on an idea together. So
I love
basically
that
just,
you added that structure of importance to like listen to others as an addition to sharing your own, because that is where we really see that breakdown with kiddos when they're collaborating, is they're so eager to share their idea that they don't tune in to their classmates and their peers. That's awesome. And this aligns so nicely with, the profile of a Virginia graduate and our 5Cs. So this is fantastic. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, I mean, I think I got a little bit lost in, so, but basically just coming up with that structure. So find the time that you're going to do this, and then, just develop your structure. You can, welcome to use this slide deck. I put the link in there, so that you can make a copy and adapt it to your needs. But just come up with your structure. And then we shared this out with our homeroom teachers a week in advance and said, what questions do you have? And, what support do you need? So for us, what that looked like was mostly, we had some students, who already received, what we would consider like tier 3 interventions. And so we would, come and like, I would be the partner for that student. So we just kind of like identified what are some problem areas, what can we get ahead of? For support or materials. Do you need construction paper?
Yeah.
But mostly this was just, they could use whatever material they had already in the classroom, because it wasn't supposed to be, and that's what I really want kids to take away, is like, it doesn't need to be this extravagant thing. You don't need to like go above and beyond to be kind.
Right.
You can take the stuff that you already have, and just make it like an everyday thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows the power of a simple act, for sure. And I'm just thinking about the ways that this can be adapted for a variety of needs. You could even do this if you weren't able or didn't have the capacity, or it wasn't a need to do it at a school-wide level. If there was a classroom who was struggling, there was a teacher that was having an issue with collaboration within the classroom, or there was a lot of referrals coming out of a classroom during group work time, this would be a great way for you to do an intervention on that, and to get in there and provide some support. So it's extremely adaptable and it can be used in a variety of ways. So I love that. And you can even do it with a small group, actually, the more I think about it.
Yeah.
So that's great. I love how you talked about proactively thinking about the issues that teachers are going to face and trying to get ahead of them, so that it really is a seamless, product, and it goes well. So what, I know you mentioned making sure they had materials and allowing them to ask questions and thinking about students that would need that additional support. Were there any issues or things that came up that you weren't anticipating that you had to sort of work through during this?
Yeah. I think, we left everything like really open, like you can use whatever materials that you would like, any helper. And, some classes were able to really roll with that. Others had like a lot of questions about like what that was, and like, we're very nervous about doing it right. So that was, I think, the main thing. We really didn't specify like how or when to deliver. We kind of left it open to teachers. And I think if we were to do this, maybe we would set a time, like for a delivery time, so it wasn't like, it was fun interruptions, of like, 4 kids knocking on the door. But, we have a very large school, and, so I would set like a delivery time next time. Delivery day was a little bit chaotic.
Well, kindness and chaos, they can sometimes go hand in hand, but it sounds like it was a fun day. That's for sure. So I see that you also have linked on here the letter to stakeholders. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, we really wanted to kind of keep this in the building, with our other, we've done Kindness Week for 3 years in a row. So this was our 3rd time around. And the prior 2 years, we had included families and stakeholders, like you guys can write a letter to, and show us that you've mailed something, kind of ideas for families to be kind. This time we kept it in the building, but we still wanted to share what the kids had been doing, with their families and with, people who cared about them. So we just kind of wanted to show off what they had made. So we kind of had a couple process videos, like, here's them during the creation stage working together, and then a lot of the final product. They really did an awesome job. Like, they had moving parts. They were really thoughtful about designing a card specifically for the recipient. So like our music teacher, he plays the saxophone for them. So this card at the bottom, it says like, your saxophone is smooth and cool, just like you, like they thought about what that person would want. We also saw, staff members who are typically overlooked on holidays, like, the custodial staff and our cafeteria workers. They were overwhelmed by the number of cards that they received. It was really a nice way to, just recognize some of those members of our school community that, don't always feel that love.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that. I love these pictures. You can tell the kids were really engaged in it, and it was extremely meaningful. I know that you also did a reflection sheet as well with students. Do you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, so we wanted them to be able to take away, the skills that they learned. So they were, we were directly, or their homeroom teachers, on our behalf, were directly talking about the skills that they were supposed to take away. Then they were getting a chance to practice. And then I wanted them to be able to think, how well did I do on this? So for grades 3 through 5, they got this reflection sheet, one for every student, and they kept it throughout the week, and they were supposed to check through and see how they'd done. For the younger grades, they talked about it as a class. So the teacher would say, like, did you welcome everyone into your group, even if you don't usually work with them? So they were able to go through and kind of reflect on their skills. And at the bottom, they were asked to identify what is a collaboration skill that they want to keep working on after this week. So maybe they could identify, like, it was actually really hard for me to share my ideas. So, some students really do struggle with speaking up. They're more of like an observer in a group project. So that could be something that they identify, like, I'm really good at supporting others, but I'm not very good at, contributing my own ideas. So things like that.
And I know you shared with me that you all did this right before schools were closed due to COVID. So you weren't able to collect the result data that you would have liked to have been able to do. I'm sure that it would have produced results. I'm sure that calls on the walkie and referrals would have gone down. I'm also just thinking about as a teacher how valuable this reflection sheet would be for me to see. It's great data for you as well. I was thinking about following up with additional supports, but then as a teacher thinking about how my students are doing with collaboration and how I can assist them in building that skill set. This reflection sheet would be so valuable in that respect as well. So I think that this is one of those things that oftentimes we get so busy that we forget to do something like this, but this really is just a great example of adding closure, but also providing students with that really important opportunity to self-reflect and think about how they can grow and continue the skill. So I think this is a great example of how we should be doing that, whenever we're doing a lesson or any type of curriculum. So thank you for sharing all of this. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you feel like we should make sure we discuss, with anyone who is interested in trying to do this at their school?
I don't think so. It was, kind of like a, a low material. So like there wasn't, nothing fancy. It was pretty easy to pull together. And, like we said, we hoped to have had like data to show how effective it was. We were hoping to actually use those reflection sheets to kind of identify like a small group type, to work on different collaboration skills. That can definitely be something that we do in the future. So we don't have that information to share because of school closures. I will say our major and minors did go down dramatically. I can't say that it's because of this.
Yes.
But
But it's very ethical of you to not take advantage of that and use that data, because we know there would have been a confounding variable in there for sure.
for sure.
I think that this is fantastic. I know you did it in elementary school, but I can see middle school and high school students getting into this and being excited to have this opportunity. And we know that they need to work on their collaboration skills just as much as elementary. So thank you so much for sharing and for all that you're doing for students. We really appreciate you, and take care.
Oh, thank you. Of course.